And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. Good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes, 9 minutes after 6 the time. Well, an important day for Cell C. They listed, you'll hear from their CEO in a couple of moments, Jorge Mendes. Important conversations, of course, around the future of the prepaid market and what cell phones, their whole business is going to look like in South Africa. Peter Wharton-Hood's the CEO at the Life Healthcare Group. They had quite strong results today, spending a lot of money on CapEx. You'll hear from him too. We'll also look ahead to Black Friday. I have to say two things about Black Friday. The first is there's no better day for someone to try and steal money from you. It happened to me last year. I was lucky enough to get it back. Just was money taken out of my credit card account. Just, if I were you, couple of times tomorrow and then again on Saturday morning, just do a quick check. Just have a quick look. Make sure you haven't lost anything. Go into your credit card account. Go into your normal accounts. Just make sure that money hasn't been taken. If they're going to go, tomorrow is a very good day for them to try. That would be the first thing. The second thing is, I would like to hear from you if you've ever actually had a good deal on a Black Friday. Did you park outside a shopping center at 4 o'clock in the morning and get the big TV? Did you do something else? Did you, I don't know, get a good bicycle or a good cell phone or something? Or maybe you just got something even more interesting than that. The best deal you ever got on a Black Friday, please, on 072-702-1702. And talking of Black Friday, Investment School tonight, we will talk about share discounts, which is about as close to Black Friday as I could manage to get. Investment School. Good to hear from you tonight on 011-883-0702, 021-446-0567, and of course your voice notes, your best Black Friday deals on 072-702-1702.
The Money Show
With Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus tab.
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, Life Healthcare reporting its normalized earnings per share up by over 10% in the year to the end of September. The group also expanding. It's been able to increase its paid patient days. Peter Wharton-Hood's the CEO at the Life Healthcare Group. Peter, good evening. Your paid patient days are up by 1.1%. Your occupancy is higher at 69.7%. Do you believe you'll be able to increase those metrics still further?
Yes, Stephen, we do. We've got some ambitious plans which we guided the market to in our outlook statement to make further investments in infrastructure, recruit doctors, and that's how you drive improvements in volume. It's about having more facilities and more specialist doctors with admission privileges to your hospitals.
You're investing in particular areas. In fact, 2.5 billion rand on CapEx. Where are you spending that money? Where do you think this growth is going to come, geographically and by sort of sector?
One of the bigger commitments that this group has made in the last 10 years, in actual fact, it's the first new build hospital in a decade for Life Healthcare, is in Life Paarl Valley. Adjacent to in the Paarl Valley Franschhoek area. That will be 140 beds initially, but we're building the underlying infrastructure to cater hopefully one day for 250 beds, which is a really big hospital. We've then got a selection of existing facility expansion opportunities during the course of the year. We will add a further 89 beds through a number of our different hospitals spread around the country. We're adding a cath lab in Mount Edgecombe. We're adding a new vascular lab in Life Rose Park. We're expanding our complementary services, acute rehabilitation beds, renal stations, PET-CT sites, and cyclotron investment that we made some time ago, going online in Midrand during the course of Q2. So it's where the opportunities are that we are specifically following them. We can't just say it's geographically concentrated. It's pretty diverse.
I mean, clearly you see a lot of room for growth. You see a middle class that will be able to afford your services.
We also see competitive boundaries being stretched by investing in these specific areas. We are able to attract patients into our facilities. The domain of improvements in the economic circumstances and growth in the insured market is a long shot at the moment, Stephen. Lots of other things outside of our control need to take place for that to happen. We remain optimistic that the private healthcare market will grow in due course, but for the moment, in a flat market, we think that making smart investments in the right places is the way for us to grow our shares slightly disproportionately.
You want to recruit 140 new specialists, and I presume you mean specialist doctors. And I mean, one of the perennial stories in South Africa has been we'll have a shortage of doctors, especially specialists. Are you finding that specialists, are you able to find them? Are they happy to stay in South Africa and work for groups like yours?
Absolutely. I think the myth that we slayed about a year back was this constant discussion that specialist doctors are emigrating from South Africa is just not true. If I get my maths correct, Stephen, the stat to the end of September of 2024, which is the one that I can still recall, of the doctors that left the platform, I think 7 of those were immigrations and 3 of those returned within 6 months. So it's a very, very small number. A worry, however, is young doctors, non-specialized, who not getting chances to specialize in South Africa. That's the longer-term worry for the country. And what we do there is we have committed to close to R500 million over 9 years to actually fund the training of specialist positions, so that we are also making the contribution to society. Because without specialists, we don't have a business. So it's the lifeblood of our business, and we take it very, very seriously.
We've seen various groups opposing the introduction of a national health insurance system, and it seems to me, and this would be my view, Peter, and I'm going to ask you if you agree with it, it would seem to me that the prospect of an NHI has probably receded over the last year. If you go back to where we were before the election, it was possibly more likely then than it is now. I could be wrong on that. Would you agree with that, or do you see it differently?
Well, it's certainly subject to so many challenges and contests from a legal perspective that, the rollout, however it may have been planned, has been significantly hampered. Life Healthcare stance is not to lead to confrontation. We've held a widespread belief that, the ultimate ambition statement to deliver quality, accessible healthcare to South Africans, and no decent human, and certainly no hospital operator, would argue with that as a statement of intent. The challenge, however, from a life healthcare perspective, we just didn't agree with the way that the government introduced the concept, and we didn't agree with the plan that they had in place, because we advocated in the parliamentary hearings for a building block approach. Let's train more doctors, let's train more nurses, let's upgrade and revitalize the state healthcare facilities that are already in existence. Let's get improved hospital management in place, and let's find a way of collaborating so that private actually plays a role in this improvement for all of South Africa. And as you can see and have heard, that's hardly how the discussions have gone. It's been all about financing, and it's all about being courtroom battles, and nothing tangible has actually taken place.
Peter,
so I think there's a lot of water to flow under the bridge here, Stephen. Lots to go.
Yeah, no, it would seem so. Peter Wharton-Hood, thank you. CEO of the Life Healthcare Group, 17 after 6.
The Money Show on 702.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, Cell C listing today, its share price opening at 26.50. They went up by about R1 a share by the close, meaning that the company's valued at just over 9 billion rand. There had been an initial valuation from Blue Label ahead of the listing at around 12 billion rand. The CEO at Cell C is Jorge Mendes. Now, Jorge, good evening. Congratulations on the listing. Firstly, how do you feel about the valuation? I imagine, like any CEO, you might have wanted it to be a bit higher.
Yeah, thanks very much. An exciting day for us. But yes, a factor of many things when you talk about the starting valuation. So would we have preferred a higher number? I think certainly. But given all the debt to equity conversion instruments and we created a pro forma, so a consolidated view of the assets we've taken, it made it a little bit tricky for investors to say, well, perhaps we haven't got enough of a track record in the new format for the valuation to be higher. So, but we're okay with it. We're perfectly comfortable. I think now it's only got an upside from it from our point of view.
You've had a difficult time, obviously, for various reasons. I know that you believe Cell C has a very compelling investment case. Why do you believe it's going to make money in the future?
Yeah, thank you. We certainly believe that our CapEx light model, we've pioneered a new network strategy. So we reckon that if you've got physical infrastructure, there's going to be some consolidation that takes place. And the model that we've gone after is a CapEx light model. So we've got a virtual radio access network. We buy excess and spare capacity from MTN and Vodacom in terms of great partnerships that we've got with them. And that gives us access to 28,000 radio base stations where we didn't have 5,500 of our own. We also use a dual multi-operator core network strategy, which allows us to move traffic between the two. But importantly, having another base station next to 3 or 4 existing good base stations doesn't seem logical when you look at market consolidation. So there's no secret that market consolidation will happen in future, and we think the first phase of these are infrastructure consolidation. So that technology strategy is a very different one. We also have a platform for growth. We've got 4 engines. We think we'll do well in prepaid, new products and propositions, distribution channels on the back of a good quality network, postpaid business that we've acquired back now from CEC, an enterprise business that's got lots of upside and opportunity off a very low base, and our MVNO business that's got great partnerships, and that's growing really, really nicely, and it gets us to market segments that we haven't reached before.
Okay, so all of that may be true, but it's also growing more competitive. I mean, Telkom's clearly taking prepaid customers from Vodacom and MTN, and I imagine, most of your customers are prepaid. I imagine they give you stiff competition as well.
Absolutely. I think Telkom have been a great competitor. They've done very well 12 quarters in a row, and I think they're running a phenomenal business. We have seen some contraction by the other 2 players in prepaid from a revenue point of view. We think we'll be able to go positive. So we think we've got a growth story coming off a lower base. We've got exciting opportunities and propositions for a customer-centric organization. So we think we'll be able to take some share there. We're also a very lean and agile organization. We're only 900 people, so a strong partnership model on how to get to market. So it's compelling. So far, we're seeing decent results, and we think it's at the beginning of a nice story.
You make the point that you don't have capital expenditure, fine. It makes you very flexible. There's a lot you can do with that. It does mean, though, that you depend literally for your very existence on MTN and Vodacom. Are those still comfortable relationships? I realize there are quite a few pluses for them, but your business still does depend, in the end, on your relationships with rivals.
We do believe that there's going to be consolidation, and infrastructure consolidation helps in many, many ways. We even believe that between the 2 main competitors, there'll be consolidation. You've seen it already with some of the passive elements of the network. It's going more to the active side of the network. So as long as there's one operator, at least in the sector, 2 preferably, we think we've got a business model, because I really don't believe that the future game is about only the mobile base stations. I think there'll be consolidation at different levels. We own Spectrum. We've got our own core. So we've got all the other aspects except the physical towers of a full mobile network operator. And in future, when you look at LEO, so low Earth orbit satellites, who knows how much traffic that will carry compared to terrestrial versus the non-terrestrial spectrum. So maybe steel structures in the future, I don't say they're obsolete altogether, but they become less of a dependency when it comes to infrastructure. So we think we're positioning ourselves for where the future is growing.
Okay, a lot of things are going to change. That'll mean there's going to be a lot of pressure on you as all of these things change. There are more and more ways to communicate. You're going to have to stay very much on the ball. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying, in a way, your entire business model is going to rely to an extent on your rivals and then staying one step ahead of the game. And the game includes some very good players.
Absolutely. I think that's what keeps you sharp and focused. You've got good competition. I think we're leading the pack when it comes to our MVNO strategy. We're going after market segments with very good partners. We've done so intentionally and deliberately. We're probably the only partner that has done so intentionally and deliberately. And that's got some good growth. We've already put out through this roadshow process that 4.7 million customers on our MVNO platform in terms of the HLR platform is a sizable number, and we think it's at the beginning of a very good growth story. So it's different, and it arrives at the market through a strong partnership model. So if you think of, if we want to go off a particular segment, we could either build the proposition ourselves and give it a name and fund it, or you partner very deeply with the kind of partners that we have, and you get to that market segment quite quickly. And given our P&L structure, so we don't have no capex, we're just capex light. We still spend between 650 and 800 million is the guidance we've given on systems, etc., that are largely customer facing. We've revamped 70 stores. So the money goes into the customer facing stuff. But we do believe that we've got a really good positioning for the market, albeit with a very strong competition.
Most of your customers are prepaid. Do you think that's going to be the basis of your offering for a long time? I mean, within all of these changes, is it still going to be prepaid, which is where most of your customers will come from?
It's the biggest rand value, and it's the biggest revenue generator today. We think that's changing. It will still be large, but if you look at the disproportionate growth, for sure, MVNO growth will be disproportionate. Enterprise at a percentage level will be very high, given we're coming off a low base. We haven't participated in public sector business for a long, long time, SLC. We've got some really great partners that we've signed up. So that's boding well in terms of percentage revenue growth off a low rand value. And then our postpaid business, we've been fixing, and part of the debt-to-equity conversion instruments that we used as part of this process was to acquire CEC, Communication Equipment Company, back from Blue Label, which is effectively the postpaid handset financing business. So we will run that postpaid business, and we think, given that that business has been in decline for a number of years, we've now stabilized that, and it's got some significant upside. We have channels, as an example, distribution channels that we never had before. So if you take iStore, we were the only network not integrated there, and that's a high-value segment customer base. A number of new tariff plans. So we think we're well positioned for regaining some share in that space as well.
Jorge Mendes, the CEO of Cell C, thanks very much indeed.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Viv Govender's portfolio manager at Rand Swiss. How's it, Viv? I mean, Cell C, I don't know, maybe it was just me, but a sense of disappointment with the valuation, perhaps?
Yes, a slight disappointment. They were hoping for a little bit higher price, so it came on, a little bit at the lower end of expectations. Look, it's kind of holding stable there, but, who knows how much of that is just the kind of window dressing we're seeing at the start of the listing. In terms of the actual, business going forward, it's obviously a very competitive space, and this is by far the smallest player that's listed in this space at the moment.
And I mean, that prepaid competition is going to be relentless. Telkom is bringing a lot of pressure on MTN and Vodacom, and Cell C must be feeling that.
Well, yes, well, certainly. Look, I think the overall sector is likely to go up in valuation over the next little while because of the fact that, as AI comes into play, we're likely to see an increase in demand for data usage. But in terms of the, what's going to be required for that, you are going to be requiring a, greater capacity, and you need the kind of capital to invest in that. So I don't know if that's going to be something that, Cell C is going to be able to compete in next to the bigger Vodacoms, MTN, even Telcoms out there.
Life Healthcare, their profits are up quite nicely. They're obviously very confident about the future as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, they obviously are seeing some positivity in South Africa, which is obviously something to be, looked at favorably. They did have a significant, accounting loss that they had to push through, and that obviously did affect them. But yeah, they are seeing, like I said, the positivity in South Africa.
And I mean, it seems to me there was a time when I thought maybe the NHI was going to threaten some of the private healthcare groups. For the moment, if you look at their figures, you look at Netcare yesterday, they've probably got a long way before the NHI comes even close to them.
Yes, I mean, look, we're having, obviously, looking at the government trying to, do what it does in following procedures and so on. And, that moves slower than a government implementation, especially something as big as NHI. So we need to basically, obviously accept that and come in the future. But at the moment, these companies still are seeing an opportunity for business in South Africa.
Soko Sun had results out today. They're only 1% up.
Yeah, look, it's been a bit of a bad period for the company. Look, they are moving towards apparently more online, towards gambling. The online gambling space has exploded in South Africa. It's a interesting industry overall in terms of its effect on the overall economy. It's short-term positivity for things like generation of economic activity, as well as in terms of what's been happening with regards to tax collection, etc. And in fact, the government's getting a 20% tax in there. But you look at the how mental health as well. In the US, there's rates when online gambling is introduced.
Viv, I'm just going to ask you to move around a little bit to strengthen the signal on your cell phone. US markets closed today. It's Black Friday. It's Thanksgiving, I should say. Black Friday tomorrow.
Yeah.
Google's had a really interesting week. There's the Gemini issue, and then of course there's that deal around AI chips with Meta. Suddenly Google's looking very, very strong again.
Yeah, look, I mean, a couple of years ago we had calls for Sundar Pichai to resign because they thought he might have been missing the AI kind of race. Satya Nadella with Microsoft was obviously one of the guys in the listed space was actually leading the space with OpenAI and so on. But let us not forget that Google is the company that actually created the AI technology that other people are using. It has, it's got fingers in Waymo, chip creation with the TPUs. Obviously, it has a greater probably database of data that any company in the world would like, for instance, Gmail as well as YouTube, which they're kind of using at the moment. So they always had a huge advantage. It's just kind of they're getting out their own way. And I think what's been happening the last couple of weeks is they're kind of taking it more seriously. The one danger for the company is the fact that the flip, which is probably the most profitable single, is likely to be cannibalized by AI going forward.
Viv, I'm afraid we are losing you on that line. Thank you. Viv Govender is portfolio manager at Rand Swiss. In a couple of moments, more on, I nearly said Thanksgiving, more on Black Friday, just what to expect tomorrow. It might just be me. Maybe the advertising is no longer following me around on the interweb or something. I just don't seem to see as much of a buzz or feel as much of a buzz about Black Friday as I did say last year or perhaps even the year before. I don't know how you're feeling about it, but also your best Black Friday deal that you've ever had so far on 072 702 1702. Just gone 6:30.
WhatsApp Stephen
On 072
702
1702.
Question tonight, the best Black Friday deal you ever got. And you can't say you got married on Black Friday.
Hey Stephen, how's it going? Ryan, yeah. So a couple of years ago, Black Friday, Vodacom had a really good deal for their home fiber, and it was like $4.99. It was stupid. So I signed the contract, and I just haven't renewed it. They keep trying to upgrade me. I'm like, no thanks. And I keep paying the same amount because the contract on that Black Friday was there was no terms in terms of when it ends, and it's been a blessing to be able to just pay very little for very good insets. So yeah, thank you, Black Fridays.
Thank you. Is that the first time in recorded human history that a customer has got won over a cell phone network of some description in any way? I don't know if that's ever happened before, that actually happens, that they didn't read the fine print. I think we need to mark this day. We need to get the historians on it because it just never happens. Your best Black Friday deal, 072 702 1702.
702 with Stephen Grootes.
Email him on stephen@702.co.za.
18 minutes now to 7 the time. Well, Black Friday tomorrow, just a reminder, you really do need to keep an eye on your bank accounts tomorrow. It's a very good day for people to try and steal from you. I just don't feel the same buzz, hear the same kind of noise around Black Friday this year than I did last year. Maybe I'm gone blind or something. Kani Motsagwa is the research director at Shizi Research. Kani, good evening. Is it just me? Was Black Friday not got the same buzz as last year?
Good evening, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me on here. So you are absolutely correct. We are all feeling it. You're not the only one that's not feeling the hype and the excitement. It is actually a general consensus. And it is quite interesting, the evolution. If you think about when Black Friday was first introduced to us as South Africans, and how it is really, really shifted and moved till today. Absolutely correct.
What do you think's changed? I mean, if you ask me, Stephen, what image do you see in your head of a Black Friday? I kind of see people outside a big store trying to find the biggest television they can, that kind of electronic segment in particular. And then I suppose everyone else got involved in it and maybe it just went a bit too mainstream, if that's a thing.
I suppose you could say it's gone mainstream. So the answer really is it's not completely closed off. People are not completely closed off from Black Fridays and so forth. But there is something around savvy spending that they are realizing. So it is actually more of a planned purchase. People do start saving up for that Black Friday. And that's simply driven by the fact that they've realized over the years that the discounts are not quite what they would have anticipated them to be. You are not actually getting things at near nothing. So what is happening is that consumers are spending wisely the months ahead of Black Friday, and actually they know very well what they are going to be buying, where they're going to be buying it, and they can actually even tell you if it is a good enough deal or not. So they are quite happy to actually say, you know what, this is not worth my time. This is not worth the discount. And actually, I think I'll give it a pass until I am quite ready. So that hype and that gimmickry around Black Friday has definitely waned around South Africans. Much more savvy, far more planned, and to be honest with you, a lot more critical about how deep that discount is, because we have always known and expected that Black Friday discount will be very, very deep and you're going to save loads. But it actually isn't that way.
Could it partly also be because there's so many different ways to sort of check on prices now to compare, because everything's now online. So you can know well in advance what the price of something will be on Black Friday, and therefore you don't actually have to leave your house anymore.
That is one aspect of it. So that actually contributes to the planned purchase. So you can start looking and you can compare across retailers and so forth. But that's just only one aspect of it. The other part is the fact that Black Friday is not actually just limited to one Friday, which is the last Friday of the month. Many, many retailers, many stores are actually making it a Black November. So you actually do have time from your October salary and planning, actually up until your November salary and planning around that. So you've got a bigger window to kind of start comparing. You can go and see and touch and feel and experience whatever it is that you want to buy. But absolutely, there is a massive shift, and we are seeing that with consumers telling us, as researchers saying, Kani, my purchase is planned, and the planned purchase typically tends to be around those high ticket items. So the televisions, like a bed that I've been saving for months and months. It is also around January things that I'll need. So they are looking at things such as stationery. They are looking at what can I get for my children, would uniform or shoes during the start at this point. So it is very, very, very cognizant of their spending and absolutely well planned.
Kani, I'm just going to put you back to our producers for a second and see if we can just improve the strength on your voice. I mean, there's so many things around Black Friday that are so interesting. I do wonder if there's a kind of dilution of the whole idea, and I wonder if that's part of it as well. Is that just because there's so much advertising coming at you all the time, Black Friday, Black November, Black whatever, and that just sort of removes some of it from it. Kani, there's another question which I think is really important, and that's also about the fact that Walmart branded stores are opening tomorrow, and I just haven't seen much buzz around them. I remember when Walmart bought part of Massmart, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. And I think it's landing tomorrow with kind of more of a, just a kind of not even a splash. I think people aren't even noticing. Do they just leave it too late?
Not really. I mean, the conversations around Massmart and Walmart have been happening for quite a while. But what happened a few years ago, you might remember with Cambridge, when all these Cambridge stores were launched. And there was an expectation that we will see more consumers going into this frenzy of buying in big items in discounts and filling their trolleys and so forth. It isn't really so anymore. And that's really driven by the fact that so much changes on a daily basis. Before you know it, for example, petrol has gone higher. That means it also impacts the price of how much your taxi will cost you to get to work. So because life is just so unpredictable, you also find with parents, for example, the school will say you need this item or that item tomorrow or next week. People are not able to plan that far in advance. So having stores such as your Walmart, where they do encourage your bulk purchases, and your Cambridges that do say if you buy in bulk, you get a deeper and a better discount, people are simply not ready to plan that far in advance. Life is changing on the daily, and there's so much that is unexpected. So weekly and even daily top-ups by families and individuals is really the trend. And that's where things are going, because I do not want to be caught unprepared or unawares that something's going to change tomorrow, and it impacts not just me but my whole family. So they are aware from what we have seen in the data. There's just simply the excitement just isn't there, because it doesn't really fit with the current lifestyle and my needs today, which is the money's better off in my pocket than it is sitting in my grocery cupboard or in my pantry.
How fascinating. Thank you. Kani Motsekwa is the Research Director for Shizi Research. Black Friday tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing how that all plays out. 11 minutes now to 7.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
702. Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
The Money Show is in conversation with Momentum, discussing the importance of focus in the science of success. We're back for our weekly series on the Momentum Science of Success campaign, exploring your money fingerprint and how it shapes the way that you think, feel and behave with money. You may remember a couple of weeks ago we spoke to Dr. Liesl Laurie-Mthombeni. Tonight we're actually joined by his wife, the broadcaster entrepreneur. She's also a former Miss South Africa, Liesl Laurie-Mthombeni. She's also completed the money fingerprint assessment. Paul Nixon back with us as well, Momentum's Head of Behavioural Finance, just to look at the behavioural insights of it all. Liesl, good evening. It's wonderful to meet you over the phone. You've lived a very public life. You've been Miss South Africa. You're in the media, entrepreneurship. When you think about money, when you think about what being successful means to you now, what experiences when you were much younger, what sort of shaped your mindset?
Thank you so much for having me this evening. To answer that question, I think Paul and I had a huge conversation around this a couple of weeks ago, and it's definitely growing up with slightly less than. Having not ever had backup savings because my grandmom was the one who raised me, and she was also the one who raised everyone and looked after everyone in our family. There was never that little pocket that we could go and tap into. And that definitely shaped the way I look at money today. Like, I need to have savings. I need to have that little pocket that I can tap into should things go wrong. And also, if I do need to celebrate myself at any point.
Paul, Liesl's talking there about things that happened a very long time ago when she was very young. I mean, those childhood memories, those kind of memories of money, they must influence us as adults.
We've all got stories about money as kids. If I can, there's some common key themes around those stories as well. One of them is anxiety, which Liesl has just mentioned now. So, I remember growing up as well. One of my good friends in primary school, I noticed one day he wasn't at school, the next day I wasn't at school. And, we found out a couple of weeks afterwards that his dad had gone to the casino and sort of lost the house on the table. So, that obviously created a lot of anxiety, and that creates some very negative associations often with money, but obviously people respond differently to these. And, another key theme is definitely the kind of status thing, right? So, as kids, we go to other people's houses and parties, engagements and whatnot. And we realize very quickly that sometimes people have more than us or we have less than them, and how are we treated in those situations as well. So these kind of things all contribute to the attitudes that we form around money, and, anxiety and that net worth equals self-worth are two of the big ones.
Liesl, you completed Momentum's money fingerprint. Doing a test, it digs into emotions, it digs into behavior. It's not just sort of numbers and budgeting. What struck you most about it?
I think when I was excited and standing by to do the test, I was so standing ready with my, how much savings do you have a month and how much income do you have and, what are you doing? What are you investing? And the part when it then was asking me things that was definitely tapping into my emotions, my anxiety, my stresses around money was something that really shocked me. Because here I was thinking that Paul and the rest of the Momentum team would be more interested in what I'm doing with my money, but rather they were interested in how my emotions and my thought processes around money actually affects what I actually do with my money.
Paul, so many of us, we look disciplined, we look like we're in charge, but there's a sort of invisible stress about money. It's quite common. You look like you're in control, but geesh, go underneath the surface and people are scared.
Yeah, the simple reason for that, Stephen, I think it's just, control does not necessarily equal peace. So a lot of us can be very disciplined with money. We can be very rigid in our budgeting process, for example, but we can still have a lot of anxiety about money. Not having enough or disappointing people or, going back into hardship, for example. So, financial well-being is not just about the numbers part, which is obviously important. That's the budgeting and the discipline side. It's also about, your, the peace that you can generate from having money as well. So well-being has got we need to consider both of those dimensions.
Liesl, I mean, you've been in the public eye for so much of your life, and there's an expectation you must have money. You must, arrive in this car. It must be an Uber Black, How do you maintain your own sort of financial boundaries without being pulled into all of that?
In my 30s now, I'm very much better at doing that. I think when you're a bit younger, the Uber Black and the who's driving which car is a very important thing. But what I've learned, over the last maybe couple of years is surrounding myself with people who don't just focus on, what is the fanciest and the nicest. Surrounding myself with people who are planning for their futures, people who are focused on investing and growing their lives, not just in the moment of now. Because I think if we do live in that space of who's shining right now, who's got the fanciest car right now, we don't think about the future. And that brings about, being unfocused and being or disinterested, or rather a lack of interest in what you are going to be doing with your future. So mainly for me now, I always say to my husband, I like hanging out with people that are older than me, mainly because I can sit around with their wisdom. And that comes from that part of like, what did you do? How were you doing it? What is your focus that got you to, the place that you are right now? And I love being around individuals who are focused on the future investments, future property, and, just future lifestyle.
Paul, I mean, if you looked at Instagram, you'd think everybody drove a soft top and everybody, drank only the finest French this or Irish that. I mean, that must show up in people's fingerprints, and yet you've got to stay focused.
Yeah, indeed. So, I mean, there's, Morgan Housel, we've mentioned him a few times, over these chats as well. A wonderful book called The Psychology of Money. He talks about the man in the car paradox, which is, when you see someone driving a Ferrari, for example, a lot of people, you don't actually look through at the person in that car. You just think about how cool would I look in that car, so we just want to make sure, obviously, that there's nothing wrong with wanting nice things and buying nice things. We just want to make, obviously, sure that you don't, that you get what you pay for. So if you're buying these nice things to get other people's respect, you're probably not getting what you paid for. And, obviously the discipline side comes with that as well. So can you actually afford it? And what opportunities are you foregoing by spending that way now?
Liesl, I mean, you look back on your own journey. Was there a particular shift, a particular mindset shift, maybe something in your behavior that made you just feel a lot more empowered about managing your money?
I think it's having the understanding of a hairdresser studied hair and is good at hair. A doctor, my husband's a doctor, so shout out to him. He studied medicine and he's a really good doctor. Me, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a person who necessarily works in finance. What made my behavioral shift move over the last couple of years was understanding that if I need to be looking after my money or any aspect in my life, I need a professional or someone that is at least more educated in that space than I am. So when it comes to, for example, my finances, I need someone who knows finances. We sit around and you listen to Oma and Mom give you the information that they have, but it is so limited because, yet again, my mom is an educator. My grandmother was an educator. Very, very respected, very, very well-educated woman, but not necessarily in finance. So I think if you can break that down, even just to friends and family, that sometimes you do need somebody who is a bit smarter than you in the aspect or the avenue you're trying to go down to help you with those things. And for me, meeting someone who was well versed and who was a financial advisor in my mid-20s was definitely the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Paul, if you want to uncover your own money fingerprint, you want to know more about the Science of Success campaign, where would you go?
You can just visit moneyfingerprint.coza and take the test there and learn about these things for yourself.
Paul Nixon, thank you, Head of Behavioural Finance at Momentum. Liesl Laurie-Mthombeni, the broadcaster personality, former Miss South Africa. Really do appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. 8 minutes after 7. Lots going on. We'll speak to Siphumelele Zondi in a moment about what's been happening in London. There's been a big cyber attack there. Looks like some councils have actually been hacked. This is becoming a huge problem, by the way, in so many places. Small business focus. A wonderful question. Are boring businesses still boring? Sankoba Vuba will be with you. And then in Investment School, the pre-Black Friday edition of Investment School. It's all about share discounts, why it is that you can have a holding company that holds certain shares in them, and the value of the holding company looks less than the actual value of the shares they hold. Why does that happen? Why do they trade at a discount, and how does it work? That's the focus of Investment School this evening. Good to hear from you, of course, on 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice note on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
So I said last night, it seemed to me there was reporting on Bloomberg that the US President Donald Trump might say South Africa is not invited to the G20. It's being held in Miami next year. And that would sort of be in response to what President Cyril Ramaphosa and our government had, correctly in my view, sort of managed, and the way in which we had managed the G20 over the weekend. We know the Trump administration didn't want a leaders' declaration. We know they boycotted. We know that all of the other nations of the G20 went ahead and actually passed the declaration and basically defied, in a way, and I think an important way, the Trump administration. So when Trump does this, several things come to mind, and you try to wonder, what is the actual aim? So is the actual aim to isolate South Africa? If that's the actual aim, it's obviously going to fail because all of the other countries that were here agreed with us. So what you're doing is you're forcing those countries to decide to be with South Africa or to be with the United States and the Trump administration. Now, from the declaration, which basically points to we'll work together and we look forward to seeing each other under the British presidency in 2027, if you look at that, you can see it seems obvious to me that any move against South Africa in the G20 is actually going to isolate the United States more than anyone else, more than isolating South Africa. It forces everybody who agrees with us to sort of publicly agree with us. And some of those countries, I think, are going to do that. So then your question would be, okay, but why would Trump want to be isolated? And then I think, well, actually, this is what comes out of the typical kind of strongman playbook. Because if the US is isolated, he can say it's the world against us, and you need me to protect you. And that, for me, is where the key to all of this lies. The net result of him isolating South Africa is actually going to be the isolation of the United States. And that's what Trump wants, because then he can say, look, everyone is against us. You have to vote for me. It's all about domestic politics. It's also about race, in my view, as well. Very much about race, because he keeps lying about what's happening here. But I found it very, very interesting. The other big topic we're talking about tonight, Black Friday, voice notes still coming through. Best deals, 072 702 1702.
Hey, Stephen. Yeah, the best Black Friday deal I've ever had was when I was looking for a monitor. Okay, a bit of nerd talk, but I was looking for a monitor that had at least HDMI 2.0. And come Black Friday, this was last year, it just so happened that the monitor that I was looking at didn't get a deal, but another monitor that was even better, that had HDMI 2.1, which was exactly what I needed, happened to be on sale. And it was 500 Rand less than the monitor I was looking at. So I was like, this is a no-brainer. I'll go with the monitor that has what I need. I can run the stuff I want. Well, not run, but have the refresh rate I want with the correct port. Yeah, but that was the best Black Friday deal I've ever had.
Thank you. I love the detail about it, the technical detail. It's just great. I mean, I'm completely with you, so thank you for that. Really do appreciate it. 13 after 7.
The Money Show, Tech Thursday.
Well, in the UK, London dealing with what seems to be quite a sophisticated, coordinated set of cyber attacks. Some of its councils have been targeted, and we see a lot more of these things we've heard in the past about how they hold people to ransom. Siphumelele Zondi is our tech expert. Siphumelele, how's it? What happened in the UK?
Hello, Stephen. Well, it seems like there are a couple of councils like Kensington and Chelsea, Westminster, and Hammersmith and Fulham. And it seems like they've, as you rightfully say, suffered a cyber attack, and it's they haven't made public the extent of the information or the data that has been taken. But what's happened is that the City of London, the Metropolitan Council there, has decided that they're going to shut down a lot of their services in order for them to investigate what's been done or protect what hasn't been hit just yet. So if you are traveling to London, as we know that a lot of South Africans do, if you have friends and relatives who don't know what's going on, as we do know that the city that most South Africans who live outside the country live in, that's what happened in London. That's why they probably can't do a lot of what they easily do when they're trying to get their council services. It's because they've suffered a cyber attack.
Do we know who would actually do this? And I mean, this is always the problem. It's very difficult to know who the individuals actually are.
The police, that's I'd say they already do know. They said they sort of figured it out on Wednesday night, that would be last night, but they haven't made that public yet. And it's actually not the first time that this happens, because there was, I believe it was Hackney, a couple of years ago, about 5 or so years ago, and there close to 500,000 residents' data was stolen by the hackers. So that's the information that they probably would be looking for to try and figure out the information that the residents of the place would have when they're trying to do this.
So often, I mean, we get told what to be careful of. We get told not to sort of allow ourselves to be fished. That's fished with a PH. We go on all of these lessons that our companies make us go on. And yet these attackers are getting more sophisticated. And I suppose somewhere in this, AI is probably helping them more than it's helping me.
Well, totally. There's also been what is believed by those in the space that has been the first ever AI cyber attack, and they believe that is a group called GTG 1002 that carried this out, targeting about 30 organizations. We don't know where these 30 organizations are just yet, but it's an AI, so they say about 80% of this was carried out by AI, with human intervention probably performing about 10 to 20% of the tasks.
Sure. I mean, if you've got AI agents that can't really be controlled by humans, they run autonomously, and they're able to hack into systems, I mean, I don't know who's going to control them. I mean, I can sort of see where this movie ends, and Bruce Willis isn't going to save us this time.
Well, you see, that's the thing. Here, at least we do hear that there's about 20% of the tasks that are carried out by humans, and that 20% includes basically identifying who the target will be and then allowing AI to do the rest of the work. Like once they've pointed at the target, AI goes in, AI cracks the passwords, or whatever passwords were there, AI extracts the information. But as AI gets better, especially as it lands in the wrong hands, AI is possibly going to be trained to figure out who to target. And as you say, it might actually not have great repercussions, because now it's AI figuring out who to target, or maybe even AI deciding to target just about everybody in order for it to get the information that it wants.
Who do these attackers target? And I know it's often sort of state facilities, hospitals. There's an oil pipeline in the States, and council buildings, councils, obviously.
In this particular incident, Anthropic it's an organization that's involved in cybersecurity. They said that they used their Claude Code AI, and they say what they figured it out is that they targeted all sorts. Really, again, they haven't said gone public with who the 30 organizations. They have said that governments were targeted. They have said that big corporations were targeted. So they've targeted just about a myriad of organizations that could include states, governments, and their entities as well.
Siphumelele, good to talk to you, although, as always, such a difficult topic. Siphumelele Zondi, our tech expert.
The Money Show, Small Business Focus.
Tonight, discussing the question, are boring businesses really boring? Actually, quite an interesting question if you think about it, because some things look quite boring on the surface, but running a business is never boring. Songqoba Vuba is an entrepreneur and business strategist. Songqoba, good evening. Everyone, when you hear of a new business, kind of almost automatically think I'm going to hear the phrase AI afterwards. I'm going to hear unicorn or something like that. But that's surely not what most people are doing.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me as usual. And that's exactly it, right? It feels like, if you keep listening about all the things about business, that everyone's building the next unicorn, which then isn't a unicorn, right? They're supposed to be rare. And everyone's building the next AI and lateral learning models type solution. And like you say, I mean, for most part, most entrepreneurs are just not in that line of business. Some entrepreneurs are doing boring businesses and sometimes making a bit more money with a little less risk actually than some of the incredible tech stuff that we think is kind of the norm in the small business space.
So, I mean, does that mean that we could all be focused on the wrong thing? We're all looking for the single-horned animal, when really what we should be doing is actually looking for opportunities to make money.
You've nailed on the head there. Looking for opportunities to make money and serve needs that customers have. And the reality is, I mean, a silly example, I really want to own a car wash, you know?
Yeah.
If I think about little things that I spend money on a weekly, daily, monthly basis that just tick away slowly but surely, but also often are really old school business models, right? So there's a trend of late, which is being seen, and those who have some capital are moving on it, where if you think about the typical generations, I'm a millennial, so millennials, Gen Zs, all after the tech AI boom, some more than others. And our boomer generations are getting older and letting go of some money printing businesses. Car washes, as an example, aircon conditioning companies, right? And the question with this and the opportunity that exists is there are really simple efficiencies that can be included into those models that would actually take those businesses to the next level, and you're not starting a business from zero.
I mean, you take over a small hairdresser. I mean, you're not going to go out of business, or a makeup artist or something like that. I mean, you really are. I mean, are there boring businesses we use every day of the week? We don't really think about it. I'm thinking about people who, I don't know, sell toilet paper at a taxi rank or something.
I think there's a lot of businesses that we don't think too much about. And I like to challenge the fact that they're boring. I mean, I really think that there's so many things that haven't been solved for efficiency. So there's probably something you moan about on a regular basis that you have to do often, but you don't like how it works and you think that it can be improved. And the reality is that's a business. That's an opportunity. I mean, I was using the car wash example. I hate the car wash. My car's normally really dirty on the outside, really clean on the inside, because I would much rather prefer a quicker process, one that is somewhat automated, so that I'm not checking if the guys forgot to clean my wheels or my, the roof of the car or underneath the bonnet or whatever it is, and actually get to a point where I'm not kind of counting pennies for how many car washes I need in a month, but perhaps maybe a subscription model to actually say, well, wash your car as many times as you need. And if you hit a button, we'll come do it at your house because today you can't drive out to us. So there's a lot of kind of those businesses that have been owned predominantly by the boomer generation. And as they decide to cash in some of that wealth in those family businesses, they're actually offloading those businesses, which creates an opportunity to acquire a business and effectively make it more efficient and continue to make good money.
I mean, who owns these businesses? You suggest older people, but I imagine people who've been running them for quite a long time.
There we go. And that's normally the thing, that they've started these business a while ago. I mean, I've got an incredible entrepreneur who's retired, supposedly on paper, and actually is running an oven installation business.
Wow.
Imports impressive ovens from overseas, and he calls himself the oven installation mechanic. This guy used to be the CEO of one of the credit bureau businesses. So you're right. It's people who've been running these businesses for a while, sometimes quietly on the side, sometimes doing it to keep themselves busy. And there comes a point where they're kind of trying to consolidate their net worth and consolidate time to spend with grandchildren, and are actually looking for either partners to invest and get involved in the business, or actually to sell it out completely.
And I suppose the other thing is that running any kind of business, almost by definition, can't be boring because there's so much to do. I mean, you might not enjoy all of it. I mean, I would be a disaster with accounts, and possibly car washes. But there is so much that you've got to do. You've got to manage this. You've got to manage that. You've got to sell. You've got to get yourself out there. And just being busy means that you're not bored.
Exactly. So I don't think any business is boring, like you said. I mean, I think that even if you think it initially looks boring on the surface, there are many different interesting and exciting ways to make it more efficient and make it a better business, but definitely not boring, because being an entrepreneur is one of those things where you effectively are doing a couple of jobs, probably 5 to 10 as one person. And that means that you're constantly on your toes and constantly trying to figure out how to stay on top. So definitely not boring.
And also being an entrepreneur, just looking for new customers, keeping things going. I mean, if you go and look at what's going on around a car wash, there are so many different things. You do it right. I mean, you can do hair at the same time as you're getting your car washed. I mean, there's no reason why you can't have a little offshoot.
Correct. So it's like, if you're doing that car wash, where's the best location for a car wash? What other ancillary services should you be doing? When people are sitting there for the 45 minutes waiting for their car to be ready, what else could you cross-sell that's a lot better than some of the picnic benches that you see people sitting at the garage? Even for, I mean, something simple, plumbing businesses are, I mean, if you've hung out with a plumber and got to find out how much they make, tilers, pest control. I was shocked recently by a pest control guy who came to do a session at my home and finding out how much he makes, but also what he used to do. People are walking away from kind of these sexy jobs to actually take on businesses such as these, and are actually finding it an appropriate challenge.
I don't know, with pest control, is that why everyone's arguing about BEE all the time? Oh, that was terrible. Thanks so much for coming through. Really do appreciate it. Sankolba Vuba is the entrepreneur and business strategist.
The Money Show.
Investment School.
24 minutes now to 8 the time for Investment School tonight. Well, there was an opinion piece by the Element Investment Managers CEO Keith McLaughlin this week. It was on MoneyWeb. It's all about discounts. And in the spirit of Black Friday tomorrow, we thought we would focus on discounts, share discounts. But in this case, what we're really talking about is the difference between the value of a share and the value of a holding company that might own that share. Both of these would be listed, and why there is a difference between them. If you're a bit lost, so am I. Gary Boyson is the director at Rand Swiss. Patrick Matidi is the head of equities at Alawani Capital Partners. Gents, good evening. Gary, let me start with you. Okay. Let me try and explain what I think I'm talking about, and you can give me a mark out of 10. Be nice. Let me use the example of Naspers. It has a stake in Tencent. Tencent has a share price. If you look at Naspers, sometimes the value of Naspers seems to be below the value of Tencent. Or another example would be Brait. There's a difference between the value of the shares they hold in some companies and their own share price. How did I do?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable explanation. And another one would be Pick n Pay and Boxer, I suppose, as well. So sometimes Pick n Pay's stake that it holds in Boxer is larger than the whole share price of Pick n Pay. So how do you explain that? And there's many ways to explain it. And there's many reasons that you get these discounts, specifically in holding companies. And I think the piece that Keith was writing, was just highlighting that these discounts, I think a lot of investors look at a discount like that and they go, oh, yeah, I mean, you probably heard it a million times. Oh, well, if you buy Naspers at these levels, you're getting 10 cents, but you get all the other businesses for free. But the fact is, the point that Keith, I think, was making was that many of these discounts, they exist for a reason. And that reason is often the risk associated with holding, the alternative structure. And like I said, the discounts in holding companies can be for many reasons. I mean, you might remember Astoria years ago as well, which I think was an anchor capital firm at that stage, and they had a wonderful, spread of international instruments. It became a listed equity, and it was really it was kind of the fees through the structure that was creating the discount. So yeah, absolutely, you could have gone and bought Astoria at that stage. You would have had, the net asset value of the share was way above what the market price of the share was. But there was a good reason for that discount, because there was an expensive fee structure in place, which eventually got unwound. So yeah, many reasons for it. And I think again, like I said, the point that Keith is making is when things are discounted, when things are on special, just look at why they're on special as well.
Okay, so Patrick, I need to, and let's just go into some of the reasons to why this happens, because on the face of it, it would seem to me bizarre that a company like Brait, and there are other examples, I think ARC is another, where you can hold the value, you can hold shares that are a certain value of X, and yet the holding company that owns those shares is less than X. Patrick, what are some of the sort of common reasons as to why this happens?
Yeah, good evening, guys, and thanks for having me once again. I think the other more common reason tends to be taxation. So to the extent that at some point that holding by the holding company into the underlying may be sold, it tends to trigger a whole lot of capital gains taxes. So you have to account for that in terms of the valuation of the underlying holding through the holding company. But I think, before we even go to some of the reasons, I think there are other elements or other dynamics where you do see a discount. So it's not only a holding company and its underlying, but an entity itself. You have what we call the intrinsic value, and then you have the share price. So most often those two are different numbers, but pertaining to the same company. And it can either be a premium or a discount, depending on how the market views that company as a standalone, given its own fundamental valuation and what the share price is implying. So I think there are many other types of examples where you do get to see discounts versus premiums, for example. One being the one that I explained, but another one, just a matter of interest, is a company trading at a discount to its own book value. Right, and sometimes you find companies where there isn't much on the balance sheet, but the share price is actually lower than the cash on the balance sheet. Right, so you have a lot of these examples where you have some anomalies, which clearly, from an investor point of view, it creates a lot of opportunities where, if you are right, you can make a lot of money as and when those discounts or premiums open up and closes.
Okay, so Patrick, I just want to understand this. So say, for example, you take a company, let's just say the company owns a factory. The factory's worth R1 million. You look at the share price of the company, and the company is only worth R750,000. Is that what you mean when you're talking about the share price versus the asset book?
Yeah, so in that case, it's the book value of the business, the net book value after taking out liabilities, for example, and then comparing that to the share price to say, actually, if I were to close this business today and sell off the assets, what can I get versus what the share price is implying, right? So there is also that element. And then a much trickier one is where you look at the true value drivers of the company. So you then try and forecast the earnings over the long term, and you discount those back and then say, what is this business worth? Given the fundamentals, and then what is the share price implying, given what it's trading at, on the JSE, and that difference, if you are right and you're on the right side of it, it can open up or close. If it's a premium, it means it's expensive. If it's a discount, it means there is value, and therefore, as I said, from an investor's point of view, you can make quite a bit of money if you are on the right side of things.
Gary, why would the discount exist and then close?
See, and we can get quite philosophical here, because it's an excellent example that you've used there. You've got a company that maybe is worth, let's say, 3/4 of the value of the factory. The factory's worth R1 million. The company's only worth 750,000. Now, the problem is, and I think what a lot of people don't recognize, is there's a difference between owning the company that owns the factory, even if it's its only asset, and owning the factory directly. And that company has a management team that you're buying into as well. And often what happens is, and I'm going to take Patrick's point 100%, he is absolutely answering this in a textbook way. And typically, you would expect the management team is rational. They're not crazy. They're not going to burn down the factory. But sometimes you have terrible management teams in place. And you've now bought the company that owns the factory that has an insane management team that happens to just go and burn down their own factory. Your company is now worth naught. So there's a risk in owning the company versus owning the underlying asset. And often that also explains the discount. Now,
just to be clear, the risk is that you don't control it directly.
It's not that you don't control it directly, that there are, in this case, like I'm just using management as an example, but there are other risk factors that the market is perceiving that you might not be perceiving. You're looking at, just looking at the book value, looking at the share price and going, oh, well, there's a discount, that must close. It can close in two ways. So either the market is going to be right or the analyst is going to be right. And both have expectations feeding into them. So the market price is obviously, the price discovery is created through many buyers and sellers coming together and going, I think this is expensive, I think this is cheap, and shares trade on an exchange, and price is formed. And it's, if you look at efficient market hypothesis, for example, prices can be pretty accurate, especially in liquid markets. And the idea, Naspers, one of the explanations around the discount in Naspers was that, the South African capital market just wasn't big enough to close the discount. So, obviously we went through the very complex, transaction, the process Naspers split, the listing, in Europe, and the idea that this is going to have access bigger capital markets, and that's definitely going to close the discount. That discount didn't close. So the hypothesis was wrong. And I think at this stage, you've just got to also bear in mind that when you do identify a discount, it can close in two ways. One, the discount can close because the market, all those buyers and sellers, the price discovery is wrong. And eventually it will reflect the true value. So the share price of your factory that's sitting at 750,000 eventually moves up to $1 million. Or those hidden risks that you didn't assess, that the market, the almost the groupthink, the wisdom that is many people looking at this rather than the single analyst that is making assumptions in terms of what that underlying factory is worth, that maybe thought, it's definitely worth $1 million because I've looked at all the factories in the area and they're all worth about $1 million and it looks the same, but he hasn't gone into the basement and realized there's structural deficiencies there that the market has picked up that he hasn't. So there's also an assumption coming from the analyst, and one of them is going to be right. Often it's the market, often it's the analyst. A good analyst that has assessed it correctly and has identified the market mispricing generally does very well. An analyst that misses the risk and misidentifies why the discount exists in the first place loses a lot of money.
Okay, so that's very clear. Thank you, Patrick. Then, now, in some cases, the discount is big. We're talking millions and millions of rand. And the people who are involved, so think Brait as a holding company, think ARC, think whichever, are people who are all very clever. So why then, if you're a holding company, would you structure things in a particular way, which means that your share price is trading at a discount? Is it a sign that something is being mismanaged somewhere?
Well, I'm not sure if it's mismanaged per se, because that implies an element of willful fraud.
Sure.
But I think what tends to happen is the market tends not to believe, the underlying value of those businesses. Right. So there's a mismatch. There's a dislocation between, let's say, the sum of the parts, so to speak, where if you were to unbundle, which tends to be the case in terms of trying to unlock value and close the discount, where you find that, there's better price discovery upon unbundling, and therefore that the discount closes. But most often than not is the market just not believing whatever the underlying value may be. And what tends to happen is the disbelief tends to come around because you do not have much visibility into some of those businesses. So you find that they're unlisted. They're very sort of a niche and maybe a bit more tricky to find information about because the disclosure is not that fantastic. So the market then places a discount over and above perhaps what the directors may say, those are, assets are held at. So you then end up with a business that is trading at a discount to some of the parts. And then that discount, as I said, tends to then get closed up as and when there's better visibility, especially if those businesses are also making money and you can see the cash coming through and there's better disclosure and all those good things. Or if management decides that, look, this discount is not reflective of the true value of the underlying holdings, and therefore they would like to, spin it out and list that some of the underlying separately, or, give them back and unbundle and therefore unlock a value for shareholders that way.
This also then, so Gary, does a discount always close, or can it go on like this for a very long time?
No, it definitely doesn't always close. So discounts can last for ages, and there's plenty of examples of them. Naspers is a perfect example. I mean, the discount inside Naspers, if you do, as Patrick's saying, a sum of the parts valuation, you take their holding in Tencent, you kind of value all the underlying businesses, you add them all together. That's a sum of the parts calculation. That discount has been around perpetually, and I mean now, after obviously moving the process listing, into Europe, they're now trying financial engineering to close the discount. It's literally sell off pieces of Tencent to generate cash so we can buy our own stock, to try and force the mechanics of the market to come together, because they are holding on to this belief that it's just too big and that the broader market doesn't understand what's going on. And I think that's a dangerous assumption.
I was going to say, you're betting against a whole market.
And I think I obviously mentioned the efficient market hypothesis, and just to build on that, it works better in very liquid very transparent companies. Patrick's 100% right. Where those discounts, where you're not getting proper price discovery is often where there are opaque assets that you can't understand, that maybe management understands a lot better than you. Because you don't have the same kind of access that they have. And also in smaller cap stocks, I mean, those kind of discounts happen all the time. Our market is awash with companies that trade below their net asset value, for example, because there just isn't enough buying and selling. There are not enough people in them. When we say the market, who are we talking about? It's all the buyers and sellers. And if you're looking at a fairly illiquid stock that has 3 or 4 people buying or selling it on a day, that's not proper price discovery, But if you're looking at a large internationally listed business with millions of transactions going through every day and huge value, you got to assume that price discovery is pretty good.
Which means that Nvidia's valuation must be correct.
It's a great question. That's a great question. From an efficient market hypothesis point of view, yes, Nvidia's valuation is correct. And what you're looking at there is just 2 different mechanisms of valuing a stock. Your pricing of the stock is all the buyers and sellers deciding, there's enough people buying this that feel that there is value, and it's almost like a betting market. Like it's the voting mechanism in the short term. But the analysts that's saying this is way overvalued, they have their own set of assumptions. They're one person that's going, wait, this is overvalued because I don't believe that they're going to get the earnings growth, because I believe, there's obviously Michael Burry is doing the rounds on Nvidia at the moment, and there's many reasons that he's given why he feels Nvidia is overvalued. But that's one man's perception of it, and he's either going to be right or he's going to be wrong.
We're speaking to Gary Boyson, Director at Rand Swiss, Patrick Mtidi, Head of Equities at Alawani Capital Partners. We're talking tonight about about discounts on share prices and why they exist. The Black Friday edition, sort of the investment school.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters Series podcast. Absa is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The Money Show.
Investment School.
8 minutes to 8. Patrick Mtidi is Head of Multi-Asset Strategies at Alawani Capital Partners. Gary Boyson's Director at Rand Swiss. We're discussing the share discounts, why it is that some shares trade at a discount to the underlying value. Patrick, this is really a bigger question about assessing value. So if you assess Capitec, for example, Capitec is not the sum of the total value of its branches and its IT infrastructure and its cash holdings. It's actually something completely different. It's its brand. It's the people who work for it. It's the management team. There's a lot more value in the company that you can't just look at through its book value.
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. So I think a step back. If you try and differentiate between value and price, right? So the logic goes that value is what you get, and then price is what you pay, right? And to the extent that the two are different, then therein lies the opportunity. I think in the case of, let's say, Capitec or any other entity, what we call value is a function of what we see as the true value creation drivers of that entity, from a shareholder wealth creation point of view. So yes, you need to understand how they make money. You need to understand, the sustainability of how they actually go around making money, and then place some valuation on that to get to a value, and then compare that number to what the share market is telling you. And to the extent that, the value, the underlying intrinsic value is higher than the share price, it means that indeed, if you are right in your assumptions, there's an opportunity to buy. And then the other way also, if your assessment of the true value creation potential of this entity, yields a much lower value, right, compared to where the share price is, then obviously need to avoid it, because if you are right, you will lose money if you invest in that entity. So yes, and there's a lot that can be captured into valuation, over and above what you can plug into a spreadsheet. You do need to look at the quality of management, right? Because two businesses in the same industry, they may have the same drivers, from an underlying fundamental point of view, but the main difference in terms of shareholder creation and track record, can lie in one management team versus another. And there are also a few other factors that, again, you can't plug into a spreadsheet, but from a qualitative point of view, you do need to consider over and above just looking at the numbers.
Gary, one of those factors would actually be what you believe is going to happen, not what the value is now. So often the value of a share, and NVIDIA is a good example, is forward-looking. It's what, and Capitec too, it's what you think is going to happen, not what is happening now, which means there's an element of prediction, of crystal ball gazing to it.
I would say absolutely. It's not just an element, that's the whole game. And if you think about it, just from a really fundamental point of view, when you buy a share, what are you buying? You're buying an ownership stake in a business. So what do you get as an owner of a business? You get a claim on all those assets, and you get, more importantly, a claim on all future cash flows that business creates. So, the argument there is to create to form your intrinsic value in your mind, you need to essentially take all those future values of all that cash that's going to be generated and present value it to today. Because that is essentially what it is, and you've got to just make sure that you apply the right discount rate. That's what your share price is worth. But when you think about it as by becoming an owner of a business, whether it's a Capitec, you get to have Capitec indefinitely.
Yeah.
Whatever Capitec creates in value forever, is you are going to have a claim on that. And your assumptions of what that potentially can be, that is the whole game, is trying to understand how long will Capitec be around creating value and repaying it for you, and how much are you prepared to pay? The discount value is obviously essentially like the inflation rate, and plus any risk premium that you're going to put on that as well. So yeah, that's the game. It's trying to work out how much are you going to get out of it? Warren Buffett's got a great analogy. He talks about ESOP, 2,600 years ago, saying he's taught you everything you need to know about investments, saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And the question that you've got to ask yourself is also, how certain are we that there are birds in that bush? Yeah. And how soon can we get those birds out of the bush? And then you can decide whether you want to trade your bird in the hand for those two in the bush. And it's that simple.
Patrick, we've got a minute left, but as markets you would think get more efficient, the ways of understanding companies get better, do you think that we will see this kind of thing, this kind of shared discount, happening less often? In other words, do you think that investment strategies will improve, more mechanisms to close a discount will be found, and in fact we'll see this happening less often and a discount being closed more quickly? Or do you think it's not going to work like that at all?
I think, Stephen, the markets obviously do evolve. You now have, a much more, let's say, sort of a plugged-in world where a guy sitting in Cape Town, for example, can trade any market, anywhere in the world, and then vice versa. So the markets are getting a lot more efficient, a lot more liquidity is flushing through. But I think also, for as long as you'll have different players with different, approaches in terms of valuation, seeing the prospects of a company through different lenses, you'll always have, those discounts opening up and closing, right? So I don't think you can eliminate, that completely to the point where it is narrow and negligible. But I think, to the extent that also you have companies with their own unique circumstances, that environment will ebb and flow. And I think for us as investors, we should welcome that, because that presents opportunities, right? Where if you are on the right side of things, you've done your work, you've done your homework, you have the ability and the potential, to can make, good returns for yourself and for your investors.
Thank you very much indeed. Gary Boyson's director at Rand Swiss. Patrick Matidi is head of multi-asset strategies at Aluwani Capital Partners, the business of share discounts, or discounts and share values, or whatever the technical term is, ahead of Black Friday on Investment School.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by Absa CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. Absa is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Well, in the US, on Wall Street, the turkey is browning, the family is ready, and the car is parked to get out quickly tomorrow morning so that everyone can go Black Friday shopping. Because in the United States, it's Thanksgiving and markets are closed. Unfortunately, Truth Social is open. Good evening, it's 8 o'clock.